someone strikes you on your cheek, turn the other and offer that one. They want to sue you over your cloak or tunic, give your cloak as well. And if they force you to go 1 mile, go 2. So my mom was a nurse for her whole career. She started becoming a nurse when I think she was 19 years old. This was when you could get an associate's degree and then become a nurse. She later got more education as time went on, but she began her nursing career at age 19. And she was a nurse her entire life. And as a nurse, you're exposed to a lot of diseases. You're just constantly around people who are sick and things like this. For a good chunk of her career, she was a nurse for a junior high school, and she absolutely loved it. And she had an immune system like you wouldn't believe. My mom never got sick, because she probably got all of her sickness out of her when she was 19 and 20 as a nurse, and then just her immune system was that good. So she never got sick. And in February or so, or January of 2020, she got an illness. She got what she thought was the flu. And it was brutal to her, and she couldn't beat it, no matter what. And finally, she went into the doctor, and this was before we even knew, everything that went down. And they couldn't figure it out, and finally, on a hunch, one of the doctors said, "Can I just check your liver numbers? I'd like to check your liver numbers." Okay, sure, no problem. So checks the liver numbers, and that sends them on a big journey to discover that my mother had stage 4 cancer. Didn't know it at all. She was already super advanced. She never would have found it out if she didn't get sick, COVID, flu, we have no idea. Never would have found it out if she didn't get sick with that. And she shared it with the family in March of 2020, and 8 days later, the whole world shut down. And my mother, in March of 2020, was given a choice. She was given a choice. So Jesus, he says to us these really bold, radical things. If someone strikes you, offer the other one. If someone sues you, hey, give them everything. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go 2. And what is he getting at? What is Jesus getting at? You see, sometimes in our lives, you and I can feel like things happen to us. It's like, hey, I didn't sign up for this. Why did this happen to me? Maybe it's with illness. Maybe it's with injury. Maybe it's with job circumstances. Maybe it's in family life. Something happens to us, and we didn't sign up for it. We didn't plan it. We didn't know it was going to happen. Jesus uses the extreme example of someone even just going after us. Sometimes that happens in our lives as well, where someone just goes after us. And what can happen is you and I can feel like victims. You and I can feel like we have no freedom anymore, no choices, like my life is being determined for me. And what Jesus wants to show us is that actually you're not a victim. You still have freedom. You still can choose how you're going to live. You can choose how you're going to respond. I'm not just determined on like, okay, if this happens to me, then I have to have this reaction. If someone's mean to me, then I have to be mean back. If someone sues me, then I have to sue them back. If someone forces me to do something, I'm going to force them to do something else. Or I'm going to become really bitter and angry and stuff it. And Jesus says, actually, if someone responds to you in that way, you do not have to respond in kind. You can respond differently. You can actually love. You can choose to love. You can choose to live. You can even choose to be grateful. So after my mother received this news, you can imagine that her world and ours as a family was totally turned upside down. And she was down in the dumps, understandably. She was down in the dumps. She had a really good relationship with her pastor, so she reached out to her pastor, very compassionate man. And he listened to her, journeyed with her, and then at some point, if you can believe this, he challenged her to be grateful. And she said, I won't use the exact words that she said, because we're in church. She said, what the am I supposed to be grateful for? I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. What the am I supposed to be grateful for? I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. But she sat with it, and she let the words of this loving man touch her heart, and it was like, you know how we get pearls? A piece of sand gets lodged into like a clam or an oyster, and they just work on it. It's annoying to them. So they just work on it, and create this like salve almost over it. And all of a sudden, because they don't just spit out the sand, they work on it. They create something priceless and beautiful. And so my mom just worked on it. And finally she said, you know what? I have a lot to be thankful for. And she started to live her life as a life of gratitude. She even gave thanks for the flu or COVID, whatever she had, because it allowed her to actually have some time to do treatment for the cancer. Otherwise, she would never have known. She even gave thanks for the flu. And she began to live the next 21 months so generously. It was so inspiring. She did what she could do, and she loved on. And she loved God, and she loved others. She didn't have to do that. She could have been a victim. Why did this happen to me? And just lay down. But she chose, because she was free. See, you and I are free. You and I are free to decide, with God's help, how am I going to live this day? How am I going to respond to these circumstances? How am I going to respond even in the face of hatred? We have 4 little things of saints or holy people throughout the church, made out of terracotta. And right back here, there's one of a man named Saint Maximilian Kolbe. And just briefly, he was a priest, and he got imprisoned by the Nazis. So he's in World War II, and the Nazis put him in a concentration camp. And he's a Catholic priest, so he's not married, doesn't have any kids. And a prisoner from the concentration camp escaped. And the Nazis, to create fear in the prisoners, said, we're going to randomly pick 10 people and execute them to show you what happens if you try to escape. So they picked 10 people, and one of the people they picked was a Jewish man who had a couple kids or 3 kids and a wife. And something stirred in Maximilian Kolbe's heart, and he said, I will take that man's place. I will take that man's place. And so the Nazis switched. The Jewish man with the family, they let him free, and they put Maximilian in a starvation camp. And Maximilian went into this small cell with like 9 or 10 other people, 8, 9, 10 other people, where the Nazis put them to death. And Maximilian was the last of the 11 or so to die. And the Nazi soldier that came to give him the injection to kill him, when he looked at Maximilian's eyes, he was pierced to the soul. Maximilian was totally enveloped in love. And he was loving the Nazi soldier. And the Nazi soldier said to him, don't look at me with those eyes. Don't look at me with those eyes. Don't love me. I don't love you. Don't love me. And Maximilian's like, that's not how love works. I don't just love you because you love me back. I just love you. Because I'm free. I'm not a victim. Nazis, you can't take my freedom. You can't take my freedom to love. And so I'm going to love you. And he died. And that Jewish man spent the rest of his life telling people about what Maximilian Kolbe did. He loved him. So today, you and I were invited by Jesus to a choice. Maybe you found yourself today at this Mass sick, with an illness. Maybe you found yourself injured, or you have job circumstances that are difficult, or family situation that's hard, and you feel like, why is this happening to me? You are still free. You are not a victim. You are free to love. And when you do that, things change. God shows up. Life has profound meaning and dignity. Because love, that's eternal.